Hello there and welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be looking at the Chun garage kit which I got from abroad. And first of all we're going to start off by priming the miniature, and I do that in my usual way by mixing some of Vallejo's black primer with some airbrush thinner and also some airbrush flow improve. And basically I just coat the entire model. It's just making sure that I got good coverage from all angles. The next step I'm going to take is going to be adding a flesh zenithal highlight, and I start off by using a medium skin tone and spraying from the side and above just to make sure that I cover everything, but not actually doing all the shadows that I've done with the initial base coat. Next I'll add a little bit more colour, so a brighter colour, and changing the angle that I'm hitting the model so the airbrush is pointing down more, I'm able to get a nice little gradient between a typical light source. And then one more spray from above, and this one's going to be a very light one, just from the very top. Finally, I'm going to add a final highlight just using a brush, and this is just to catch the highest possible areas of the skin, so things such as the top of the thigh, the arm, and also along the face, give an impression of where the highest areas will catch the light. And also do a low light as well, so I'm just basically darkening the areas where shadows would be. I have got the keep out as a second part, so I can add and remove that to get an idea of where shadows would appear. And it's this point where I decided to start doing the keep out. Now initially I started off using the Daily Rowley ink, which before I shook it looked like the exact shade of blue that I wanted to see. However, as you can see, it's a lot brighter than I expected, so I'll come back to this bit a bit later. But I decided to put the base coat on anyway. So now I'm getting ready to glaze the legs, and I'm going to be using an airbrush to do this, just as an experiment. I have actually done it by hand, by brush, which takes quite a long time. So I wanted to see if there was a quicker way of doing it. And then finally I decided to use Agrax Earthshade as a glaze, in order to get the tights, pantyhose, not too sure what they call them, effect on the legs. Next up I decided to work on the keep out. Now the initial paint that I decided to work with was Vallejo, which normally does actually come out quite well for me. However, for some strange and bizarre reason, and I don't know why, I don't think I'd ever used this particular paint before, but the paint just didn't seem to want to adhere to the model at all. Up until this point, with the exception of the Agrax Earthshades, all the paints that I've been using were coming from the same company, all of them being Vallejo. And as you can see, this felt like painting with a glazed medium rather than a miniature paint. And I couldn't figure it out at all, so I was even checking to see if I was just painting on wrong or adding the wrong sort of medium or watering it down incorrectly. I even tried mixing the paint a lot more than normal, but it just didn't seem to look right. So at this stage I decided to bin this colour and go looking for something that I know is a little bit more trustworthy, and in the end I decided to go with Calgore Blue, which is a Citadel, aka Games Workshop paint, and that worked really well. Now I will admit I would have preferred to have had a much more ultramarine blue, but the Calgore Blue shade did actually work quite well with the manga cartoonish type colour palette that is used in all the Street Fighter games. So at this stage we switch over to a bright white from Vallejo, and I'm going to use this on the boots and also the sash that goes around Chun-Li's waist. Now Vallejo whites is something I always trust. I think the whites that Vallejo do are the most superior option out there. This is in contrast to the Citadel whites. I haven't actually tried many other brands, but always found that Vallejo's to be top notch. As you can see, it only really needs a very small amount of coverage, so I only need to pretty much paint once, and very rarely do I need to go over it a second time, maybe just to tidy up some of the brush strokes, or if it just hasn't been opaque enough. So now we're moving on to the yellow. Now I didn't really use the colour that I wanted. I had to resort to Flashkit's yellow, and this was because Avalanche Sunset, again from Citadel, which would have been my first choice, the paint was pretty much all dried out, so I couldn't use it. Now oddly enough, yellow seems to be a colour that I don't have a lot of paint of, so it was a toss up between trying to rescue the Avalanche Sunset, which proved to be impossible, or go with the Flash Gets Yellow. So first of all, I started with a lot of edge highlighting, which was doing the trim on the keep out. And this worked out okay, although because Flash Gets is quite a thin layer paint, I did need to do quite a few layers on top, because the initial ones were just looking green with all that blue underneath it. Moving on to doing the freehand on the keep out, which would be the yellow designs on the sleeves and on the chest of the clothes, as well as some other designs on the back. This proved to be a lot more tricky because it was almost pretty much pure freehand, even though there was a molded guide to help me out. It was a lot of work, and I had to go over several times because the paint was just way too thin. If I was to do this again, I would definitely use a different type of yellow, and since then I have actually gone and replaced my Avalanche Sunset, so I do have the thicker paint to work with in future. Oddly enough, I am actually working on another Chun Garage kit, and I've actually put yellow down as my base colour, but I'll show that to you in another video in future, hopefully. So moving on to the base now, and I based this using Mechanicus Standard Grey and Nuln Oil, and I always find that creates a really good flagstone effect, which is what the base looks like. And speaking of Nuln Oil, I also used it on the boots. Now, in a way I didn't like this because it made the boots look extremely dirty, but the main reason for this was to pick out some of the details such as the shoelaces. Again, this is something I'd like to explore other ways I can do this without actually resorting to a shade. So I ended up going over this again later with white as a dry brush, and then some layering as well to get it looking clean again. And now it's pretty much tidying up and going over the smaller details, such as her wrist guards, her hair, which I did in a light brown, with a little bit of Nuln Oil to add some texture to it, and basic general tidy up of the rest of the model. Now it's just a little bit of dry brushing, and like I said, some more tidy up. I really enjoyed working on this. Chun-Li's one of my favourite characters from the Street Fighter series. It would be nice if there was more availability of some of my other favourite characters such as Vega, Guile and Blanca. I think Blanca would be fantastic to paint, so many different variations you can do. Thanks for sticking around this long, and if you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, or the thumbs down if you didn't enjoy it, just let me know. And if you aren't already subscribed, please feel free to have a look at subscribing, perhaps seeing what videos I'll be doing in the future, and every little bit will help the channel. So thank you ever so much, stay safe and take care.